Hey everyone, this is Miss Time Bunny, and today is just going to be a quick video just talking about some of the wrestling related books I've read. Now, I've not read many, to be fair. I think all in all I've only read about 4 all in all. So, but I do have others that I still need to read. But yeah, this is just a quick chat about the couple that I have read. So the first of all is the Eddie Guerrero autobiography. It's called, what was it? Cheating Death, Stealing Life. The Eddie Guerrero story, which now I think this is one I hired from the local library some years ago now. Yeah, it was quite a while. It was, I think, quite a few years ago now. And I can't remember masses from it now, but I do remember that I really, really enjoyed reading it, and it was actually like a really fascinating read of like sort of stuff and things that he'd been through and the stories that Eddie Guerrero told and stuff like that. It was just, yeah, I just personally remember really, really enjoying it, and you know, just finding it very like interesting, and I just really, really got into it, like hearing some of the stuff that like from his life basically. And yeah, it's pants that he's now passed away, but yeah, it's definitely one I think I would recommend, even if you weren't necessarily a fan of his, which I'm not, or wasn't, or anything like that. So, but I think just, yeah, it was one I personally really, really enjoyed. So, even as a sort of like non-Eddie Guerrero fan, I still really enjoyed the book. So it's one I would definitely recommend getting or checking out, or you know, don't not necessarily like, you know, if you don't want to buy it, or you know, perhaps it's not available or it's really expensive in your area, maybe see if like you can get it from like, if you have like a local library, or you perhaps have a friend or someone who has a copy of the book, maybe borrow it from them, you know, because definitely one I would say check out, like, if you can get hold of it. Another one I've read is China, the Ninth Wonder of the World, If They Only Knew. Now, again, this is one I really, really enjoyed because I found it really interesting. Another one I read, I think, quite some years ago now, but I read this, you know, as someone who actually like followed China and was like a bit of a fan of hers. So, yeah, it was just sort of like her talking about obviously like things that happened in her past and what led her up to sort of like getting into WWE. It was just like incredibly fascinating, and also the amount of shit she'd had to put up with to sort of like in her life was like, I just thought, bloody hell, you know. It was actually like really, really crazy, sort of like some of the stuff she'd like had to deal with. But again, it was like a really, really interesting book. So again, it's another one where if you can get like find a copy cheap enough, or I suppose what's cheap for you, you know, within your budget, or if it's like in a library or you can borrow it from someone, again, I'd say definitely get it and give it a read, because it's like, I personally really enjoyed it, found it really fascinating, and it was like, yeah, yeah, another one that comes recommended from me. So right, the next one we got is Lita, A Less Travelled Road, The Reality of Amy Dumas. Right. I'm probably going to make a few people angry when I sort of like talk about this one. Now, sort of for context, if I'd read this sort of like back in the day during sort of like my sort of like late teens, early 20s, when I was a massive fan of hers, I probably would have like enjoyed the book a lot more. But now that I've read it as like a sort of like 40-year-old person, and having the knowledge of the whole Lita Matt Hardy Edge thing, it's like, it was like, unfortunately I couldn't enjoy it as much as I could. I mean, I got so far in and it was actually like a really interesting book. You know, I was thinking like, oh, this is kind of cool. Just sort of like, you know, I think it was kind of reading it from the point of view of like, I may not particularly like Lita as a person anymore due to stuff and things, but you know, sort of like, well, I think it was like so far into the book, and it was like, actually, to be fair, this is like still pretty interesting. You know, sort of reading about some of her stories and life and stuff like that, and travelling and that lot. But then it got so far in, and she basically admitted to basically cheating on a former boyfriend with Matt Hardy. It was essentially the whole sort of like Matt Hardy Edge thing all over again, but with obviously like the boyfriend before Matt Hardy. And it made me kind of feel like, so you make this a habit, you just basically can't be bothered to break up with boyfriends, you just cheat on them and hope that they'll fuck off, basically, you know. But that was just kind of how I took it, you know, because it was a whole, oh, so it's not the first time you've done this, you know. So yeah, I think it's just, in a lot of ways, that it was like having prior knowledge of other circumstances. It was more of a, when I read that particular part of the book, when she basically admitted to having done that sort of thing before, it just made me think, yeah, I'm not sure I really like you that much as a person anymore. You just don't seem very nice. And also stories I've heard that apparently she was a bit of an arse to CM Punk when she was with him as well. It's like, yeah, you're not doing yourself any favours, love. It's like, you know, as I said, if I'd read this book about probably like, you know, 15 or so years ago, I probably would have like really enjoyed the book, you know. It's like, you know, I probably would have been like, you know, sort of like towards that whole bit about her and her ex and how she basically cheated on him. I might have just kind of like found reasons to be like, oh, well, maybe this, that and the other happened and that's why that it happened, sort of thing, you know. But now I'm just like, nah, there's no justifying the fact that you keep doing this kind of thing. So yeah, it was kind of a shame. So I think it was just like having only, I think it was just, that was the problem. I think because I've read it sort of like now that I'm older rather than perhaps when it first came out, and as obviously I know a lot more information and I'm just very cynical and old now. So it's just like, yeah. I mean, it's one of those ones where I think if you want to read it for like this, like words, bunny, speak them. Right, we'll try that again. I think it's one of those things where it's like, if you want to read it to say that I've read it, or if you're still a fan of Lita, or a fan of, say, like Attitude Era stuff and the people involved, or anything like that, I would say definitely read it, because I think all in all it was actually an interesting read. You know, it's like, but I think it's just because of stuff that I know about her sort of like now, it kind of, unfortunately, I think spoilt the book a little bit, because it just made me think that she's a bit of a twat, to be honest, now. And it's just like, I don't want to be thinking about that about someone who I really looked up to at one point, you know, but it's just such as it is. Right, and the last book I want to talk about is the novelisation of the movie See No Evil. Yeah, I know it's probably a bit of a random one. I've been talking about autobiographies and now I'm talking about a fiction book. But this one actually surprised me, because it's like, oh, excuse me. I don't know, I think it's one of those ones where, having like watched the movie of it back in the day, it's like, I suppose it was more of a, I didn't go into the novelisation expecting too much, because I thought, well, I already know most of what's going to happen in this book. But it was like, I think because it was like, there was more information in it. No, I think novelisations tend to be based on like the storyboards and like the original scripts and stuff like that, don't they? So what you see in the film, like the final cut of the film, is not always what was initially planned or filmed and stuff like that, because I know they change things and cut scenes out and move things around and such like. So, but yeah, I think I found the novelisation quite interesting because of that, where it was obviously based on original, like, as I said, scripts, storyboards, things like that, and there was like, I suppose little bits here and there that, you know, that were in the novelisation that weren't necessarily shown in the film, or they elaborated a bit more on certain things in the book, whereas it might have been only like a brief thing in the film and stuff like that. It was like, that was actually kind of cool, because I think it made me appreciate the film a bit more, because it was like having this extra info from the book. So that was kind of cool. So yeah, I think that's one. It was like, if you're like me and you enjoy sort of like silly wrestling related films, you know, I think it's definitely worth giving it a read, because I think, you know, it makes the film more interesting, especially if you're a fan of the movie. You know, it's all like, as I said, gives you a little bit more extra, I suppose, context and things like that for certain bits. So yeah, I think definitely for that alone, for sort of like the extra info and context, the novelisation in conjunction like with the film is definitely like a good one to read. So I think they complement each other quite nice. So yeah, I'd say definitely just sort of, even if again you just read it for curiosity's sake, just to be like, okay, sort of like, what can the book sort of tell me that's maybe slightly different from the movie, so that I can say I've read it. If you can find a copy, definitely give it a go. But on that note, I'm going to end here, because I wasn't expecting to record for like over 10 minutes, to be honest. I thought I was just going to do a quick dump, 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 and that would be it. But on that note, I'm going to end here, and I will see everyone in the next video.